Hey guys, this is Colby. Today I'm going to show you how to make a sci-fi corridor inside Blender 3.0 pretty simply in low poly. So let's get started. So starting off, I'm going to get rid of the default cube and we're going to replace it with a plane. So Shift A, create a plane, mesh, scale it up a bit. I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to add an edge loop down the middle. So Control R and click right in the middle. I'm going to delete one of these faces. So go into face mode and select one and delete one. Go back to object mode and add a mirror modifier and turn on clipping. So we basically just symmetrized the whole piece. We can do whatever we want now with it. So this is like the floor of the corridor. So I'm going to scale it down on the x-axis, just move it inward a little bit. And to start creating the walls, we're just going to select this edge here, extrude. And maybe just, you can do whatever you want with it. So I'm just going to create a little bit of detail. So extrude this way. This will be like the floorboard kind of. This will be the wall where the windows will be. This will be the ceiling. And you can add, like little crevices or grooves, like little vents. So like one more here. Just press E to extrude and create all these new faces. I'm gonna bevel this one here. So press Control B to bevel. There we go. So that's the wall and foundation of our corridor. And we can start adding more details later on. So now I'm gonna start modeling the windows. So go into edit mode and just maybe select the face here and press Shift S and set cursor to selected. That'll create the new spawn point where we want to create the cube. So Shift A, create a cube. Scale it down a little bit and kind of make it, maybe not too clipping. And what I'm going to do is just scale it on the y-axis a little bit, make it longer. I'm going to drag this face inward a little bit. And I'm going to select this face here and press I to inset. I'm going to scale this whole thing up a little bit again, just kind of tweaking it. And just add a little bit of a sci-fi like look. I'm going to bevel these edges here. So select all these edges or corners, press Control B to bevel. You don't have to, but I will because I just think it looks nice. I'm going to drag this face and press E to extrude. Scale it down a little bit. And just drag it inward on the x-axis to create a little bit of depth. And so this is like the window frame. And this is the actual window itself. And we could add a little bit more to it, like some supports and diagonal like beams. So to add some beams, I'm just going to go back into object mode and I'm going to create a new cube. I'm going to rotate it, but also scale it down a little bit. Make it like a 45-degree angle, or match it to the angle of the corner of one of the window frames to the other corner. So there we go. Just move it right there. Move this piece over here. Scale it on the z-axis. So S and Z and then press Z again. And that'll like scale it on its own axis. Try to match it to these corners better. And there we go. It's almost done. That's a beam. And I'm going to symmetrize this to the other side by just joining it to the piece that's already symmetrized. So press this piece, select it, and then select the corridor itself. Press Control J, join it together. So now it's on the other side. So at this point, you should get the idea. I'm just creating new pieces to add a little detail. Since we already created the foundation, we can just add more details to it later, in which we've already started adding details. But all I'm doing is just creating Shift A to create a cube or a mesh of any kind, and just adding it to the surface of the corridor to add some extra detail. And that's all I'm going to be doing. So now we can start basically just creating like a longer corridor by using an array modifier to duplicate this section here. So before I do an array modifier and make the section longer, I'm just going to do a little time lapse of the rest of the pieces I'm going to be adding to the corridor itself. So I'll see you here in a second. Alright, so for this little detail right here, this little like octagon, we need to basically use an array modifier to duplicate it. So I'm going to separate it by selection. So press L on it and press P to separate and then selection. So now we need to add an array modifier. And I'm going to set the X to 0, but the Y to a little bit more of an even distance. And I'm going to increase the count. I want like 3 of these basically in the middle here on the floor. And make them even distanced. So to do that, we can just go to top view to wireframe and we can see better. So I'm gonna set the Y distance to maybe like 1.9 or 1.8. 1.9 looks good. Doesn't have to be perfect. That's just how I want it. There we go. So now that we have a rainbow modifier applied to this, go ahead and apply it. Press apply and mirror. So I'm gonna join it back to the base mesh, or the corridor I mean. So select both, press Ctrl J. There we go. So now we can start adding the array modifier to the whole corridor. Since I'm basically done with it, it's one solid piece. If you have any loose parts that are like basically detached, just select the one you want to join it to and the one that's or the one you have selected, and just press Ctrl J, and that'll join everything together. Or you can just press A and then press Ctrl J. So let's add a array modifier to the whole piece. So add an array modifier. We need to set the distancing properly. So set the X factor to 0. Set the Y to like 1. And just make sure there's no gap between the transition. So like right here, there's a gap. We need to fix that just so it's set the distance like 1. Make sure they blend together. Now we have a actual series of segments or the corridors. So we can increase the count by as many times as we want to make it as long as we want. So it goes all the way in the distance. It looks really cool. It's like a really long corridor of like a spaceship or a space station or something. But if you want to go even more crazy with it, you can actually add a curve modifier to essentially make it, instead of a straight line, a curve to the right or left to make it kind of a little bit more natural. So I'll show you how to do that. So in order to add a curve to your sci-fi corridor, we're going to go in top view, and I'm going to go into wireframe mode here. And I'm going to press Shift A and create a curve and Bezier. And I'm going to scale it up a bit, quite a bit, pretty much to match the entire length of the corridor. And so right now the curve is basically pointing in whatever direction you want it to. But I'm just going to make basically this point here and rotate the whole thing like 90 degrees. So go back into object mode, press R and then Z and then 90. I'm going to do it the other way, so negative 90. Right about there. Move it to right about here, and I'm going to set this point and just kind of make it a gradual curve to the left. Doesn't have to be too strong, just make sure it's a good distance. You don't want it to be too sharp, because then the corridor will essentially just like bend very unnaturally, and it'll like kind of fold, which won't look good. Just make it a bit more gradual. If you have higher poly sci-fi corridors, you can do that just fine. But right now it's really low poly, so I'm not going to do that. So now that we have a path created that has a curve to it, we can go ahead and add a curve modifier to the corridor itself. So add curve modifier and set the curve object to the path that we just created. So right now it's on the wrong distance. It shouldn't be right there. So we can just move it. So press G and then Y and just move it into position right here. And so it doesn't match the entire length of the path that we created. So we can actually just increase the count of the array modifier to fix that. You can make it as long as you want. There we go. So now when we go back and kind of look at it from the inside, I'll try to make it easier to see. You can see that it's actually curved and it blends a lot more naturally in the distance here. And there we go. So now we can start adding colors to the whole piece, and then we'll be done with the video. So I'm just going to create simple texturing. I'm not going to do any like texture painting or anything. I'm just going to do basic colors and with like shiny metallic and all that. So for the floor here, I might just make it whites. I'm going to name it whites and press assign. And I'm going to go into look dev, so that way I can see the colors. So for now it's white, so we'll change the color. The whole thing is set to basically white because it's the only texture we have. This is all one piece, so we need to add more colors to it. So now I'm going to select these octagons. You can color everything wherever you want. So, just as long as you create the new texture and add a color to it and assign the right faces you want to it. So for these octagons here, I'm going to create a new texture and name it blue. Set the color to bluish. It's not showing right now, so we need to assign it. So now we have these little blue octagons. Look pretty nice. Make it a little bit darker. And we can just pretty much do the rest for the rest of the piece. So for the walls here, I might just keep them whites, but for these like little like beams, I'm gonna make them like a silver metallic. Just make them silver. Assign. Set the color a little darker and increase the metallic level. and turn down the roughness. I'm gonna do the same for maybe some of these window panels. So a sign. But there we go. So now that you get the idea, I'm gonna do a little time lapse and kind of show the rest of the pieces being colored and what kind of textures I'm gonna add to them. So I see you here in a second. And then we're gonna work on the lights and how to set the lighting, and that'll be the end of the video. Now I'm ready to start adding some lights. So I'm gonna select this face here and then add a new texture, plus sign, and set it as like white to light. And press a sign. And I'm gonna set the principal BDSF to emission. And right now it's not really showing, but it's actually a light. If we turn on the bloom, you can start seeing the glow. That's the first step. So now we need to add some actual physical lights in the environment. So once you're ready to apply all your lights, then you can start applying your modifiers and finalizing everything. So go to wrench, press apply on everything. And there we go. So it's finalized. The corridor is finally done. I'm gonna reset the origin to the geometry. I'm gonna go to top view. I'm gonna just add a couple lights. I'll show the basics and then you can pretty much do it the rest yourself. So I want to create some physical lights in the corners here. So Shift A, create a lights. Down here, and I'm gonna do area. I'm gonna increase the strength a bit. So if we go into render viewport, then we can see it better. In the look dev, it doesn't show, but if we go into rendered, it will show. I'm gonna rotate it a bit on the y-axis. Turn down the strength a little bit. It's a bit strong. Just pretty much move it to the corners here. There's one right here, and like one over here. And you can just do this for the rest of the lights that you just have in your scene. And it there's no like modifiers you can add to lights, so you kind of have to just manually mirror symmetrize everything. So I'm gonna select all these, press Shift D to duplicates, and move it on the x-axis, and move it, rotate it 90 degrees or 180 degrees on the z-axis. So RZ 180, and there we go. So now it's on the other side. That's how you set up lights. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you stuck till the end, I really appreciate it. It really helps out my channel and my views and my viewer retention and all that. But if you have any questions, just leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer them. And if you could please like and subscribe, it really help out my channel a bunch right now. and one day I could start making some money and get, monetization and everything. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys next time.